Under the same roof, we share the love, embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beat as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World 777, our weekly legal review with criminal defense attorney Calvin Johnson. This week, we have so much to cover. In fact, over the week, we had numerous questions that many people said we can't wait to hear what Calvin has to say. In fact, right now, even in the United States, we have airports that are being evacuated. What's happening in the world? Let's bring on Calvin to help us to break down the war in Iran and so much more, especially when it comes to Nancy Guthrie, Luigi Mangione, and all of these hot topics in the world. Let's welcome in Calvin Johnson. Calvin, how are you?
How's everybody doing today? Once again, we're back watching the world along with the weekly legal review. I'm attorney Calvin D. Johnson. I'm about a 24-year practicing attorney here in Dallas, Texas, and me and Mel have been doing this show for about 8 months, and we want to give you the real deal when it comes to legal issues and politics in America.
Very good. Calvin, a lot of people are saying that this is Epstein's war. Why would they say such a thing?
I think a lot of people are trying to say that it was a distraction to get the heat off Trump because people were seriously questioning some of the things that were being said. There were leaking bits of information that he was a lot closer to Epstein than he said he was. There were some talks about some situation with a 13-year-old girl, and that he was doing something with a 13-year-old girl, and I think that started to play out, and a lot of people seem to think that he attacked Iran, started a war to divert attention from that.
How do we navigate this whole big press release from CNN and others saying that he actually was involved with a 13-year-old? In fact, remember a week ago, I went to the deposition for the Clintons.
Mhm.
Representative Garcia came out, stood in front of me. I recorded it on live. He says that, listen, these key points about this 13-year-old involved in Trump were taken and not released in the Epstein files. And now this week, we're starting to see that they were released. Is there some there, here, or is this just fluff?
I think it might be something there. The fact that they're discussing a 13-year-old girl in terms of our president, and the fact that he seemingly had a closer relationship to Mr. Epstein than we thought initially, or that he put out initially, there might be something there. Let's be honest. We know that Mr. Trump has liked younger women. I don't know about this young, but we do know that is there. And there were some concerns about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein for a long time, and some curious behavior around all of this. Why would Ghislaine Maxwell end up in a low security prison from where she was if she was connected with Epstein at this level? You would seemingly think that there would be no situation that she would be getting some leniency, and she seemed to be getting leniency when it comes to the possibility of her talking about Epstein, giving information, and so on and so forth. And this president is one of the people that's powerful enough to give her the leeway. And so those are curious things when you look at the situation that make you go,
When we look at the Epstein files, we notice that there are a lot of tips that came into the FBI. What makes this different? What escalates this to a higher level?
I think the in-depthness of that interaction. There was allegedly information about the interaction, personal information about what actually happened. who introduced this girl to him, all of those types of things, and even an alleged particular sexual act and how even that went. That is a little bit deeper than just somebody saying A, B, and C. They gave inner details about A1, B1, C1, and those are the type of situations when you get more pointed information, you become concerned, and then you raise your eyebrows and say, hey, maybe there is something there.
All right, I really want to ask you some really deep questions, but before we get to that point, could you just set the stage by telling everybody who you are?
My name is Attorney Calvin D. Johnson. I'm a 24-year practicing criminal defense attorney here in Dallas, Texas. I am licensed in local, state, and federal court. I've been to federal court on a number of occasions on federal cases. I'm in court now. It's funny, on about 3 federal cases as we speak. In addition to that, I have ran my own law office for the past 24 years. I represented Chris Bosh at the NBA draft as one of his personal lawyers. I've worked for the largest teachers union in the state. I hold degrees in political science and history from Howard Payne University in Brownwood, Texas. And I went to high school in Dallas at the High School for Public Services, Government and Law, the law magnet. So when you look at me in terms of my experience for the last 40 years, I've been involved in law, government, and politics for the last 40 years. And so that's where my experience comes from.
Okay, very good. Very well said. Now, when it comes to Donald Trump, when he was running for president, we saw a case out of New York where he received 34 felonies. We also
Mhm.
saw down in Georgia, they were going after his head. We saw individuals take shots at his life, right? These things
Mhm.
happened. We saw it. Here's the question, though. If Donald Trump had did something nefarious with an underage or something with Epstein, why didn't the Democrats release the files?
Um, that's what I wonder. But then too, you have to realize there are millions of files that they had to actually go to and go through. So you would have to have somebody specifically go through each one of them. And then in addition to that, it seems to me there are a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, that could have been named in these Epstein files. And so I think that when you start talking about that and you start talking about the intertwinings of both political parties as well as everybody else, that those are some concerns that I think you would have just releasing his situation when you had all these other people, as well as things had to be redacted. So I think that because of the extent of all of the people involved, not just Mr. Trump, that you had to take some precautions. And I think maybe that's why it wasn't released.
Do you think the Democrats looked at the files and said, we can't give up Trump without giving up Clinton? Do you think that could have been a factor?
I don't know if that's a factor, but there may be Clinton, there may be some other Democrats and some other Republicans involved. I think that there were a lot of people in both parties that were guilty of this, but I think there were some people that were guilty by association, and there were actually people that were guilty about doing certain things, and I think that's where to be even mentioned in the Epstein files is a bad thing. And then one deeper, if you mention doing something with an underage girl, that's even worse. So I just think there was a lot there, and I think you had to be extremely careful about letting that information out.
Donald Trump, as you know, I cover pretty much a lot of the things that he does. In fact, he said basically he's stopped so many wars, in fact, 8 or
Hmm.
9. He's trying to solve the issue between Russia and Ukraine, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So so why on earth would he go into Iran? A lot of people are saying Bibi Netanyahu went to meet with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago and probably convinced him to go to war, and that's why we're here. Do you think that's true?
I think it is true. I think Netanyahu has a lot of power over people. I think Netanyahu is very resourceful. And you can't deny that there may be some situations upon which maybe, from what I've heard, the possibility of Israel having some intelligence or BB having some intelligence on Donald Trump that he does not want to be released. And so when you look at that particular situation, there's a number of reasons why going to war with Iran probably happened. And then to be honest with you, the president wants to appear strong. He doesn't want to appear weak. And going into a war with a lesser opponent you could actually look like you were being strong. I am not a fan of going to war with Iran, but with that being said, I think that's probably what happened. I think Netanyahu convinced him into going into there.
They made it very clear that the Iranians do not have missiles that can reach the United States land. So, what benefit would it be for us to really go after Iran at this day and time?
See, that's the concern that I have outside of terrorist cells potentially. I just think that situation is wrought with danger. We have a lot of allies in the region. You got the Saudis, you got the people in Bahrain, you got Oman, you got other places in that area where we have bases that can be hit from Iran. And then on top of that, not just our bases, but those particular cities themselves, because they have chosen to allow us to have bases there. Iran has in turn turned around and start to strike them. So I think that when you go into war with Iran, and we have a lot of partners and a lot of allies in that area, as well as the financial interweaving of all of those partners, I think that's extremely dangerous, and I don't think that's something we should be doing.
All right. Tucker Carlson said that we have this sort of government where there's a higher level that is probably unseen, invisible, and then you have the respective governments to each country. Do you think that's true that we have some hidden? A lot of people try to say Illuminati, that's the way they try to coin it. But do you think something like that could exist in the world?
When you talk about people with money, I think that's completely something that could happen. I mean, if you have a lot of money, you can control a lot of things. And I think there may be very influential people that decide what happens because they have a lot of money. And I think when you have a lot of money and you have a lot of access to money, I think you can actually dictate policy. And I don't know if there's an Illuminati, but I think that there are certain individuals that when they speak and when they move and when they put money up and when they make moves, that you got to pay attention to because they control a lot of things that can happen. And then we have a lot of people in this world. I say a lot of people. We have a particular group of people in this world that control a lot of this world's wealth. And so there could be a group of them saying, hey, we want this, we want that, that's going to be good for the economy, or we want this, we want that, it's going to be good for our pockets. Damn the economy. So you have people that could be doing that.
So, for the people that are saying that Bibi Netanyahu is manipulating or causing Donald Trump to go after Iran or other places maybe lined up in the future, Donald Trump does not appear like a person that's manipulated. Do you think they're just trying to push a narrative that may not be true?
About him being manipulated, I wouldn't say that he is somebody that can't be manipulated. I think that if you tell him somebody is disrespecting him, if somebody says something about him that he does not like, if somebody did something because they thought he was weak, you can manipulate him in those ways to actually go out and do something. I think you got to know what's important to him and hit those areas. But with that being said, when it comes to manipulation, I think that there is a way upon which I think Netanyahu could talk to Mr. Trump to get him to do what he wants to do.
A lot of people are saying that Epstein was an agent, perhaps of Israel or some other country. These are some of the rumors that are floating around, and that he was collecting intelligence on prominent individuals. And now that information might be stored in those countries. And that's why we see perhaps even individuals like the prime minister using that as leverage on the president. Do you think that there could be some truth to that?
I think there could be, and I think that's where I think a lot of what has happened the last few years is kind of pull the veil off of things. When you look at Mr. Trump in terms of his relationships with Netanyahu and his relationships with Putin and some of the rumors that surround that these people allegedly have inside information on him, you start to wonder why are those relationships different? Why does he tread lightly with certain people and then hammer the road like a giant nail to others? And so I think those things are entirely possible. When you look at Mr. Trump's past and you look at some of these countries and the vast intelligence networks that they have, that could be something that could be very possible.
This week in the news, a lot of people started to really push back when it came to Barron Trump, saying that he needs to go be on the front line of the military in Iran because you have all these other young and okay, we lost Calvin, so we're going to wait for him to come back on. Sorry about that, guys. James, I would love to have you come up on the show and let us hear. I understand that you're counsel as well. Would love to hear your position. Okay, Calvin's back. All right,
Sorry
very
about
good.
that. Sorry about that, y'all. But so
So when it comes to Barron Trump this week, a lot of people pushing back saying he should be out there front lining it. What do you think in regards to that?
well, it's that's a conversation that a lot of us like to have, right? When you put your kids out there, when your kids are out there fighting the war, it's different, right? A lot of these people that are making decisions, their kids are not going to go to war. Their kids are going to be nice, safe, and comfortable with their iPads and their $3,000 cell phones, shopping and going and eating their meals and doing whatever they want to do while other people's kids are over in another country fighting. And so you got to start thinking about that when a president decides to go to war, he's not sending his son, he's sending your son. And so that's a thing that people think about. Is it worth it to get involved in this conflict with Israel when American lives are lost? A lot of people would disagree and say that it's not worth it.
Calvin, have you ever heard the expression "make it rain"?
Yes.
Over the last few nights, we don't hear about it in the media, but in Israel, they have been dropping this ballistic missile that actually breaks apart into several missiles. It looks like it's raining bombs and
Hmm.
really compounding Tel Aviv, but we don't hear about it. That could be a big problem, wouldn't you think?
It can be. I think they're called these cluster bombs. They kind of break out into many clusters once you launch them. And so what happens is one big missile gets launched. Shortly thereafter, it takes off and it hits a certain height. It breaks apart into hundreds of pieces or hundreds of mini bombs. And the air defense systems will not be able to stop those. Those things are going to be huge problems. And I think that's a problem that we're dealing with. And I think that's something that maybe in the past that we did not have to deal with, but now we're having to deal with it now. And I don't know if Mr. Trump was ready for all of that to happen.
Back in October, when they did the Midnight Hammer on
Hmm.
Iran, Iran basically said, listen, we wanted to keep it cool. We didn't start shooting as much as we could, right?
Hmm.
Do you think they were expecting this new technology of some sort of cluster bomb to really take a hold on them? Because I don't see how they can survive this. They're starting to look like Gaza in many ways.
And see, that's the thing. I don't know if they thought about this. I think that the people in Iran had been getting ready. I think that they knew for a long time that this was a possibility. And I think that they've been stockpiling. And I think you have to realize these people are going to be desperate. And when you start defending yourself, right, you're not just defending yourself against America, you're defending your existence, right? Because if America comes in and they can take out your leader just like that, and you have to strike back, you're not just fighting for your life, you're fighting for the existence of the Islamic State. In addition to that, you're dealing with an enemy, and I tell people this all the time. In typical wars, I'm going to say, I'm going to kill you, and you can say, I'm going to kill you. But when you deal with the Muslim countries, because of their dedication to their nations and their faith, you tell them, I'm going to kill you. And they say, no, I'm going to kill both of us, which means they're going to blow themselves up. And I always tell people, you can't get no harder than that. When they're willing to kill you and kill themselves just to kill you, or kill themselves to kill some of you, that's a different level of opponent that you're fighting against.
Okay. In the case of Iran, they took out basically the top leader, right? So it's quite equivalent because they see him as being next to God, kind of like for individuals of the Christian faith that believe, some do believe that Jesus was the Son of God, so he would be next to God. So
Mm-hmm.
the way that they're structured, it's like taking out someone second in command. How can you really take on people that see this happening to their figure close to God?
Man, they're willing to risk it all. They're willing to die. They're willing to get on planes and blow themselves up. They're willing to sacrifice themselves. You're fighting with a different level of opponent. Not only that, when you look at the economic, financial, and human toll that is going to be taken when you're fighting individuals like this, man, you got to truly think about what you're doing before you jump out there in that pool. Because if it gets dirty, those folks are willing to go to the edges of the world and the edges of the earth to defend their country and defend their faith.
Okay, John says that this conflict with Iran was inevitable. What do you think about that?
I don't think it was inevitable. I think we chose to go in there and do this at this point. And I don't think that that was inevitable. And that's just the thing. When you look at it, I think this is something that we did not have to get involved in. Mr. Trump said he was not going to get us involved in any more wars. He even back in the day famously said Clinton is going to get us involved in Clinton or Obama. I mean, Obama is going to get us involved in some of the wars in the Middle East. And here we are. We're involved in a war in the Middle East.
Last night in New York City, I spoke to a mother who said her son had basically called. I guess he got a final call before they had to turn off their cell phones. And she was in fear that that could mean, because he couldn't state, I don't even think he really knew, but she felt like they would be boots on the ground. Do you think that's possible?
I think it is. And see, that's the thing, in war, I mean, you have to, like I said, you're fighting for your existence. So these folks they're going to combat you. They're going to send their drones. They're going to send their missiles. They're going to send their cluster bombs. They're willing to send suicide bombers to destroy you. Their whole existence is about this war. And so, it's dangerous. We've lost seven service members. And I try to tell people, of course, I have not been to war. I have not served in the military, but my uncle did. And some of the conversations that we finally had about what happens when you were in that situation, because he did fight in the war and they don't like to talk about it. And I understood why after talking to him. Man, people can lose their lives. You may have to make quick decisions. Sometimes you have to take out people. For instance, you might not just have to take out soldiers. You may have to take out civilians because sometimes they use those civilians to come after you. And so the war is a different ball game, man. You got to be extremely careful when you decide to go to war because there's a lot at stake when that happens.
What about all the people that Iran was planning to basically kill publicly? And also, you hear about, in fact, the things they do to babies and women.
Mhm.
Is this warranted?
And I don't want to sound cold, but in their country, like we were told by this president that it was America first. We were going to pay attention to our own problems. So why are we going over there getting in their business? I mean, I hate that somebody's getting killed. I hate that somebody's getting hurt. I hate those bad things are happening. But this president told us that he was going to focus on us and we was going to mind our business. And that's not the case anymore. I mean, now we're involved in a war. Oil's burning up. I went to get some gas today. Usually, sometimes I can fill up, 50s, lower 60s. Today was about $75. And so gas has went up. And so those are the kind of things that kitchen table issues families are going to start talking about. Listen, if you have a family that has to drive far to work and far home, I mean, you're adding 100, 200, $300 a month in gas by having the prices go up. So you got to think about those things as a president when you decide to get involved in these kind of conflicts.
Okay, we'd like to ask everyone to take a moment, hit the like button, share, and subscribe. We thank you for tuning in to our weekly legal review. Thank you very much. So, Calvin, what does this mean as far as gas prices going up, food prices? Is there a way forward? Do you think this is temporary?
No, I think it's going to be permanent for a while, at least throughout his next 3 years, because I don't see this conflict ending anytime soon. I think that the death and destruction of a lot of the oil producing countries that are in the middle of this conflict is going to cause gas to go up. And I think there's going to be a while before it can get back down to normal. When you look at Iran hitting Oman, hitting Saudi Arabia, hitting Bahrain, hitting the other areas that are over there, and then you look at Iran itself, which produces a lot of oil, they're being hit constantly to where black smoke is coming down and that the oil allegedly is getting in some of their water supply chain. So when you start talking about things like that, the price of gas is probably going to go up and it's going to be significant and long term.
What are your thoughts about all the Americans that were trapped maybe in Dubai and all these other places on vacation?
That's very sad. I knew somebody through one of my bail bondsmen One of her relatives was had saved a lot of money to go on this particular trip, and then she gets over there, and then the attack happens, and they get trapped, and they can't go anywhere, and they can't do anything. It's very, very sad. Very, very, very sad.
Even the Iranian people talk about how cruel and how bitter some of these individuals could be. In fact, some are saying they're happy about the action and they actually grew up there. Could that tell us that the United States is doing a great deed?
Well, I understand what they're saying, and the United States may be doing a great deed in their eyes, but is it, once again, is it our business to be over there? Is there a quick way in and quick way out if we do go over there? Those are the types of things that you got to think about and got to discuss.
Okay, I think you mentioned as a Christian, do you think that a lot of this stems to the Bible as far as Israel?
I think it does, but I also think that Netanyahu, in terms of how he conducts himself, I think you have to be extremely careful with him. And then when it comes to Mr. Trump, I think you have to be extremely careful with him. Um, and I don't want to seem like I'm questioning his faith, but his faith seems to be one out of necessity, not actual faith. Don't get me wrong. I just think that in his situation, we know that the so-called American Christians or Christian nationalists, um, they really flock to him. I think he knows he has a audience there, and I think he will do what they want him to do in the name of religion and in the name of allegedly Christ. But there are a lot of people in this country that don't think what Christian nationalism is actually the faith of Jesus Christ and Christ himself. So I just don't know about all that. That's going to be extremely interesting.
Some people are talking about the frustration that Congress is not involved in any of this decision making. Do you think that could be a big problem?
I think it is. And I think we're supposed to have checks and balances. And I think the Republican Party is afraid to stand up to him. It seems like a lot of them are just decided to leave Congress as opposed to trying to stand up to him. That's the thing that is not supposed to happen. Congress is supposed to be a check and balance to his power. But it seems to me that in that particular party at this time, there are not enough strong voices that are willing to stand up. And I think that is going to be of high concern moving forward.
Do you honestly think that the president of the United States is above the law?
I think he is. I just think he is. A lot of people will say, oh, no, he's Trump being Trump and this. Nah, I think he feels like he's above the law. Think about it. When you get a Supreme Court decision, something comes down and they tell him he can't do something, he goes and does it anyway. When somebody tells him he can't do something, he goes and does it anyway. When a court tells him he can't do something, he goes and does it anyway. If Congress says, "Hey, don't do this," we came out with this. We have a law that says you have to turn this over. He directs his people to say, "No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that anyway." And that's another thing when you think about it. This president in particular has acted like that they're disrespecting him by ruling against them as opposed to actually listening to the ruling and the rule of law and saying, hey, if they say I can't do it, I won't do it. He's just not doing that. He's completely saying, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And if you rule against me, you're wrong and you're un-American.
All right. Isn't the concept or at least the belief system in regards to Islam more of the apocalypse?
I think it could be. But I think that when you look at that, some of them will disagree with you on that. It just depends on how you look at Islam as a religion. I am a Christian, or I'm a follower of Christ. I wouldn't say a Christian because nowadays the way that they make that seem is kind of crazy. But I follow Christ, and I think that it depends on who you ask. If Islam is apocalypse, this kind of about the apocalypse. Sorry about that, thirsty. But when you look at that particular situation, it depends on who you ask. And you just really don't know. You're going to get different answers from different people.
Do you think if they had a nuclear war, they would a nuclear bomb, they would use it?
I don't know if they would use it. I think that if they do use it, I think the problem that they're going to have is once they use it, and if they use it against somebody like America, if they were to use a nuclear weapon against us or an ally, I think America would blow a hole in that place. I think they would. And I think that if they had it, I don't know if they'd use it, but if they did use it, I think they would be annihilated by us the minute that they did that, because we have enough of those to completely annihilate them as a country. And I think if they used one, I think that they would understand that. That's why I don't think that they would even use it. But with that being said, you want to keep it out of their hands. You don't even want to go through that question, because if they did use it, that could be a problem.
Over the years, the Iranians have killed so many Americans and other people as well. This has been over a 40-year trek. Could you come to the conclusion that the president of the United States is trying to safeguard the American people by doing these actions?
I think you can come to that conclusion. It's just that the way it's being done, the circumstances is being done under, and the fact that he had just promised that we were not going to get involved in any foreign wars, specifically and particularly in the Middle East. And I think he's went against that. And so that's what has everybody concerned, because he said he wasn't going to take that route. And he clearly is at this point.
It seems that the president often tries to do quick actions. Do you think that could be the case here?
What do you mean? Said it again?
Quick action. Do you think it's just a quick action of going in and coming right back out? That's the plan.
I don't think that's a quick action, because I think once you hit Iran, Iran's going to hit everybody around there. Around there, they're going to hit your bases. They're going to hit your allies. They're going to hit their neighbors, and there's no quick in and quick out there.
So how could we weather such a storm with the Iranian people at this time based on the condition of the United States right now?
And see, that's the thing. I feel like we, as a country, we have our own issues. We have ICE and immigration issues. We have money issues. We have financial issues. We have affordability issues. We're facing too many things to be getting involved in their business at this point. I think America wants American dollars and American money spent in America. They don't want to spend money paying for wars.
Some of our missiles cost around $1 million, whereas the Iranian drones are around 25,000 to 50,000. How can we throw millions at thousands of dollars?
I was told some of our missiles are worth $5 million, not just $1 million. So we have issues. We have missiles that are worth $5 million, and some of the stuff that they're using is kind of low budget, and that's the concern. When you go through a particular wave of attack for certain missiles, I mean, you could spend a couple of $100 million doing an attack. And do you want to, as a country, as a nation, right now with our financial issues, our situation, and just our instability at this point financially, do we want to get involved in a conflict where you're spending that kind of money fighting an opponent who only has to spend a fraction of that money because you're fighting on their court?
Okay. So, considering all that you know now, do you think we're going to be in for major trouble here on our soil here in the United States?
I think somebody's going to try to plan an attack. I think we're going to stop a lot of those particular attacks, but I think somebody somewhere is going to get through with one of them. They're going to send somebody in to do something. I think eventually we're going to get hit by either some suicide bomber. We're going to get hit by somebody detonating a bomb. We're going to get hit by somebody. That's just going to be the nature of this particular issue, this particular battle.
Okay, so let's switch up a little bit. I want to get back to Jasmine Crockett really quick. Have you ever seen someone that it looks like she was almost tricked out of her position and inhibited from winning to, in the bigger picture?
Well, I think number one, the Republicans went after her. Okay. And they were deliberate in going after her because they drew her out of her district. And I think her response was to, well, I'm going to run statewide. And I know Jasmine, I make no illusions about it. When she first ran for office, I actually assisted her. I brought her to my neighborhood and my communities. My interactions with her have been great. She's done a lot for the communities in my community here in Dallas, Texas, in the southern Dallas. So I have a lot of respect for her. I consider her a friend. But with that being said, would I have ran my campaign maybe like she ran hers? I probably would not have. I think that um, number one, it's a statewide race. And I can't sit back and play Monday morning quarterback. She'd always ran races, House district races and congressional district races. And I don't, I know she did not have to run a statewide for a statewide office or a statewide election. This is her first time being involved in a statewide election. I'm going to answer some questions for our viewers. How many counties do you think that a place like Texas has? Mel, take a guess.
How many counties?
Yeah,
I'd say 40.
no. They have 250 plus counties.
Wow.
I want you to think about that for a minute. They have over 250 different counties in the state of Texas. And that's a lot of counties when you're running a statewide election. There are more African American voters in the state of Texas than any other state in the United States. There are more counties in Texas than any other state in America. And so you have all of these little bitty places where a person like James Tallarico, if he's winning by 500 to 1,000 and he won like 164 counties, and you're Jasmine and you win about 84 counties or 86 counties, but you get big wins in Dallas and Houston, but the other places you have some small wins in East Texas, but he's running the score up 1,000, 500 here, 1,000 here, 1,500 there, 3,000 there. And he's doing that an additional 80 times. Where you're coming to a place like Dallas and you're winning Dallas by 40 or 50,000 votes. You win in Houston by 30 or 40,000 votes. You needed to win Houston by 90,000. You needed to win Dallas by 80 or 90,000. You needed to win Tarrant and Fort Bend County by 40,000 or 50,000 votes so that you can be competitive statewide. And I think that because she was a national figure, I think she probably thought that her name recognition would get her a lot more votes than it did. But with Mr. Tallarico, Tallarico is big in San Antonio. He's big close to the Capitol. He's big down in the Valley. He's big down in South Texas. And he was getting really, really, really nice margins multiple times in multiple counties. And I think there was maybe an illusion that Jasmine would compete more for the Hispanic vote, and she did compete somewhat, but not to the levels that maybe she would have liked. And then she lost white liberals 61% to 29%. So they 2-for-1 went for Mr. Tallarico. And I think that may have been a bit of a surprise for her. I think she probably thought that her being a woman, being a black woman, I think she thought she would get more of that vote. But with that being said, I think that there is a blind spot when it comes to doing either a national election or a statewide election. When it comes to our black women, I think they are great. I think that they are strong. I think that they have a lot of wisdom. I think that they are extremely educated. But with that being said, I think the problem is sometimes you can live in your own silo. Everybody is not going to identify with you and your problems and your issues. White folks, Hispanic folks, and people from other demographics have their own problems. And they might feel like you're not going to prioritize their problem because you're not part of their demographic. And I think that needs to be a real conversation that we have. And I think even with our black women, I think that they need to be aware of that and understanding when you're running a statewide election, or a national election, it's great that you're a black woman and that you're strong, but you also have to make sure you appeal to those other demographics. Now, there also is the issue of racism. There's just some folks that are not going to vote for somebody black or vote for a black woman, so on and so forth. But those people that are willing to do that, you need to try to get to those folks and make sure that you don't take them for granted and that you compete for their votes and compete for their votes in a way that says, hey, I understand what your issues are and I'm going to stand up for those. I'm not just going to I'm just not going to stand up for my group and forget you. And I think sometimes that may be a little myopic and living in a little bit of a silo, that because you're a strong black woman that people are going to vote for you. No, they have their own issues and they will identify with other people, other candidates. And I think we need to be aware of that.
So there's the whole deal with 7 p.m. and she said basically she was shafted. Could you shine some light on that for us?
Let me explain something to you. For the last 30 or 40 years, the elections in Texas, you could vote anywhere in the Dallas area, in the county. So let's say I live in South Dallas and I happen to be at work in North Dallas, and I might not make it all the way home on time. I can just go to a polling place in North Dallas. Now, early voting, you can vote anywhere. But on election day, you had to vote in your precinct. So as opposed to being able to drive anywhere in the county, and let's say I get stuck in traffic and it's 35 minutes to get to my precinct. In the past, I could stop anywhere. I could stop somewhere 5 minutes away and vote. Just give them my license and tell them who I am. And they would look me up. They'd be able to type it up and pull it up. And I'll be able to vote. And they'd get me my ballot and I'll be able to vote. Well, this time they made precincts. And then you had a lot of people that did not even understand that they had to vote in their precincts. So they would show up and try to go vote somewhere else and realize you can't vote there. You got to go to your precinct. And a lot of them sometimes didn't know where their precinct location was. And there was not clear delineation of where those precincts were for particular people. So you could live next door to somebody a few houses down, and their precinct may be one place and your precinct can be another. And so people were getting pushed to multiple different places and they didn't know where to vote. And I think that was a situation upon which the Republicans in Texas, they set it up this way because they know we would get confused. My issue was that the local Democratic Party here should have done a better job of making sure that that did not happen. Even though they sent out notices, even though they advertised it, I think that they needed to send door knockers. I think we needed to have more volunteers. And there should have been an anticipation that the Republicans were going to try to cause this confusion, because I even heard that at certain locations, there would be 8 machines for Republicans and 3 for Democrats. And so the lines were longer and going slower. And so there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And there was a lot of disenfranchising of people, especially in the Dallas area and Williamson County, which are areas upon which Ms. Crockett felt like she was going to do extremely well. And when you're talking about Dallas, so let's say 10 or 15,000 people don't get to vote, and 80% of those people are voting for you, that's a problem. So I think that is an issue. But I think that the Democratic Party needs to understand one thing. Who is our Attorney General? It's Ken Paxton. Ken Paxton is who? A Republican who potentially could be an opponent, who's running for Senate, who happens to be Attorney General now. And so we have a Republican Court of Appeals. You have a candidate on the other side who is the actual Attorney General, who can actually go in and say, I'm running for Senate over here, but as Attorney General, I'm going to try to stop these people from voting past their time. So I think there should have been an anticipation by our party leaders here in Dallas that, hey, that could potentially happen. There could potentially be some confusion, and there needed to be a plan to be able to deal with that. And I don't think that happened here in Dallas.
Jasmine Crockett, hands down, raised more money probably than most other Democrats in the area. So why did the Democrats turn their back on her?
This is what I'll tell you. I think that initially, maybe she wasn't the person that they wanted to succeed Eddie Bernice Johnson. People have to realize Eddie Bernice Johnson was a stalwart. She basically was an icon. She probably was the most powerful African-American woman in Texas history, and one of the most powerful women in Texas history, because she was in Congress for decades, and Jasmine succeeded her. But I think that they probably thought that somebody else was going to succeed her. And Jasmine kind of popped up, did well in a local race, had a lot of wind behind her sails, and she ended up being able to get elected, actually, with the help of Eddie Bernice Johnson. But with that being said, Jasmine is a more new progressive. She's not the old school Democrat. And maybe she wasn't the person that they wanted to pick to be able to go in there. And with that being said, I think that what you had this conversation around electability. And I think there's two things here. A lot of people view that as we're good enough to vote for you as black people, as black women. We're the most loyal to you, but you don't want to put us out there in statewide races. We're not electable, as you say, but you want our vote. I think there's a little bit of something to that. And I would be, as an African American woman, I'd be upset if somebody told me 92% of y'all vote Democrat, but we don't want you to run in a statewide race. But with that being said, I also think that there's certain things when it comes to electability that if you are a black female Democrat and you're running for office, you got to make sure that you don't just appeal to black female or even black men. You got to appeal to white voters, Hispanic voters, the voters in the LGBTQ community, the voters in rural Texas when you're running a statewide race. And so you got to pay attention to those type things. And you have to understand that it's great that you're a strong black woman, but everybody is not going to identify with that. And everybody's not just going to trust that to take care of what they need to take care of for themselves. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned. I don't think that you have to be or take it as a slap in the face all of the time. Is there some racism and some genderism involved in maybe not wanting to put a black woman up against a male Anglo opponent in the general election? Yeah, there's maybe some racism in that. But with that being said, you got to know that you have to appeal if you're going to run. If you're going to run statewide in Texas, you got to do one of two things. You're going to have to appeal to people in rural Texas. You're going to have to appeal to Hispanics because they make up a large vote swath of who votes in Texas now because they're angry about what Trump is doing to them, deporting their family members. So they're going to come out in droves. But with that being said, I think one of the things that I kind of pushed, and I actually said this to Jasmine, I said there might need to be a bigger push to black men, talking specifically to them a little bit more. And voters in the Dallas and Houston, Fort Bend counties of Texas, which means you got Dallas and Tarrant County, which is Dallas-Fort Worth. And then you got Houston and Fort Bend counties, and you had the largest concentration of African-American voters in those two places. And I think if you're going to run a statewide race, if you know you might not appeal to rural Texas or white liberals in Texas, you literally got to run the numbers up crazy in Dallas County, Tarrant County, and in Houston and Harris County and Fort Bend County. That's just what I was thinking. I was like, I don't know if you're going to appeal to people in rural Texas, and it's okay. But if you're not going to appeal to people in rural Texas, you got to have giant numbers in your strong areas, and you got to win by 60, 70, 80, 90,000 votes to compete if you're not going to appeal to people in rural Texas. And then there's another issue because Mr. Tallarico is a person of faith. There are a lot of people, especially in the Hispanic community, they look at some of the Democratic policies and they say, you know what? I may not be okay with some of that. Mr. Tallarico is like us. He looks like us. He's a preacher kind of kid, somebody who has, I say kid, a young man. He's a preacher type young man who is a person of faith. And a lot of people are resonating with him because of that. And I think that is something that we have to look at and say, hey, even though Jasmine was way more qualified than Mr. Tallarico, let's not miss us with that. She was way more qualified for him. But just because you qualified does not win you elections. I was in an election here in Dallas County where I was way more qualified than everybody else, but I didn't win. But because part of that was that people identified with another candidate and they felt him. And Jasmine has to be careful about maybe how she sees that, because I think when you're almost like a national star and people love you across the country, that's not going to always translate in a general Texas election where people all over the state are voting for you. And I think she learned that. I think we have to give her the grace and the space to learn that, because think about it. Every time she's ran and there are other 3 or 4 elections she's been in, she's won. This is the first time she actually lost an election. So with that being said, she has to learn too. And we have to give her grace so that she can begin to understand maybe things that she wants to do different moving forward.
People in the audience, and thank you to all the watchers, guys. Help us get up to 100 likes if you could. Thank you. Quite a few people in the audience are saying she lost because she's fake and she's dumb and ignorant. What do you think?
First of all, she's a civil rights lawyer. Second of all, she's been practicing law for a long time. She went to law school, passed the bar. She's worked, I think, as a prosecutor and a defense attorney for a number of years. Um, she's ran businesses, own law office. I've been around Jasmine personally. I saw her um, in the community, and people want to say she's fake. I will tell you, like, I'm somebody who, in the beginning, I watched her. I invited her to two of the neighborhoods I'm from, the Bonton community, South Dallas community, and the Dixon Circle community, and those are two rough places. Jasmine wasn't scared to come in. She wasn't scared to come in and talk to the people. And not just say talk to the people. I've seen her several times stay later with individuals, get their phone numbers, go back and reach back out and try to help them. She came to communities that a lot of politicians that I have been in Dallas with for years who've been elected will not come to. And so she won her elections because she actually came down, talked to the people, helped the people. She got money for Fair Park. She got $3 million to renovate Martin Luther King Center, which was in woeful disrepair, and people for years did nothing about it. She actually did something about it. So when people say, oh, she's dumb, she's stupid, she's fake, no, I've seen her genuineness. I've dealt with her. That's why I supported her, because I said, you know what? You came to one of my events where we gave away bicycles. She immediately came to another neighborhood of mine, gave away bicycles and bicycle hats so that these kids can ride, and did an event with us on short notice. And I saw her with people, talking to people, engaging with people. So when you say somebody's fake, I don't buy that. I've been around Jasmine. I know she's a real one. You might not like her. You might not like her style. But in terms of dealing with people, in my experience, she did a great job of that, and she continues to do so when she comes to the Dallas area.
I think in popular circles, it's not cool, it's not attractive to like Trump, but I think a lot of people speak negatively about him. But I think on the low key, I think a lot of people actually like Trump. I think they trust him because they feel like the guy, whether you like him or not, he speaks his mind. Whereas some presidents we don't even hear, we got to kind of try to figure it out. So, with that being said, do you think it's wise for Democrats, if they're going to try to beat Trump, to talk about him negative all the time?
I think you have to do more than that. I think, and I said this before when Kamala Harris ran, and had a lot of people disagree with me. I said, you can talk about Trump all day, but you got to start at some point telling us what you're going to do. You have to let us know who you are. You got to let us know, in this situation, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, and E, and F. And you can't just say, hey, Trump's bad. I'm not Trump. Vote for me. That's not going to work all of the time. Some people may say, yeah, Trump may appear to be bad, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do different? How are you going to help us? How are you going to do something in this situation that's going to be or go in a direction that I would want to go into, as opposed to, hey, Trump is bad. Don't like Trump. Trump lies. Trump does stuff with Epstein. Just vote for me. No, it's not going to fly. And then when you look at it, there are some things that those individuals who vote for Trump like. I mean, there are a lot of independent voters. There are a lot of people that even on the left that don't like like some of the things that are happening on the left. So what you have to be able to do is not just say, hey, Trump is bad, vote for me. You got to tell me what's good about you and what you're going to do to help me as a voter. And I don't think that the Democrats at times understood that. You just can't go hammer, hammer on Trump, 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 and not tell me what you're going to do and who you are and how you're going to do things differently than he would. That's going to benefit me as a voter. And I think that the Democratic Party has to do a better job of that.
Why do you think there's no clear, distinctive leader within the Democratic Party?
I think it's a huge tent. And the reason why I say it's a huge tent, you have white liberals, you have moderate Democrats, You have African American Democrats. There's a little bit of divide between African American men and women that's actually happening. You have Hispanics. You have people that are in the LGBTQ community. And you have all of these groups that make up this broad coalition. And it's hard to just get one leader out of that sometimes that's going to appease everybody. And then we're not even talking about there's some Democrats that consider themselves people of faith that feel like at times that they don't have anywhere to go within the party. And so you got to start thinking about those things. There's about 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 subgroups, large groups of people and voters in the Democratic Party that have their own different interests. And I think that's why you have a problem coming up with one leader. And when you look at MAGA, MAGA's all, I'm going to make America first, work for conservative values. We want that. And they kind of stand on their own. You may have some Democrats that say, hey, I'm not for what they're doing over there. I'm for this, but I don't like what some of my people on the left are doing, and I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that group. And you may have some people that say, you know what? They're looking out for themselves over there. We're going to look out for ourselves over here. We've been talking all day about what happened to Jasmine, right? So Jasmine got about 80-something% of the black vote. She got maybe 25, I think, between 25 and 30% of the Hispanic vote. But when it came to the white liberal vote, he beat her 61 to 29%. And see, that did not surprise me because anytime that I went on Facebook and I had friends that were white liberals, they were not talking about Jasmine. They were talking about Tallarico. And I would say that if I would talk to 5 people, that 4 of them would be talking about voting for Tallarico and only 1 for Jasmine. So that did not surprise me. It may have surprised her, but it didn't surprise me. I think there's so many different groups that it's hard to get one leader out of there.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit. In Minnesota, we heard all the hoopla about what the Somalians were doing and all the fraud, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
we saw 2 actually individuals lose their lives at the hands of ICE. As the weeks go on and they continue to peel back the onion, lo and behold, the person that sits at the top of the food chain gets fired. We won't call it fraud, but spent 220 million on advertisement of herself. So, is it the lowly Somalians or is the entire system just that bad?
The whole system is that bad. Let's talk about Christy Nome. And I'm going to tell you what happened. And the thing that bothers me. There was a $143 million contract given to a company that only had been in existence for 8 days. So some company was incorporated 8 days before the contract was handed out. Never did business with the government, and they were given a $143 million contract. Okay, let's start there. Let's dig a little deeper. Not only were they given a $143 million contract, hey, why don't we go to their website? Guess what? There isn't one.
What? Oh, man.
So there's no website for a company that we gave a $143 million contract that's only been incorporated for 8 days. Okay, let's go to the physical address and see if there are any people there. There's not. So the company actually is tied through a subcontractor through some people that Christy Nome was dealing with in her home state. And so you had that going on. So a $143 million contract to a company that never did business with the government that has ties to people from Christy Nome's home state. Okay. That doesn't have a website. And when you go to a physical location, you don't see anybody working there. Like, who's working for them? What's their employee list? How much are they getting paid to do what they do? We'll never know. Because the General Accounting Office has been blocked in their investigations of these companies, but somebody got pieces of the information to be able to get out of there. Not only that, there were some renovations done to a couple of these airplanes where they actually put a picture up and Christian Nome says, what they asked her, I said, what does this look like? She said, a bedroom. And the guy said, no, it's on a plane. Y'all put a bed room inside of a plane and it was paid for with governmental tax dollars. And so when you start, and then you got the situation upon which they say her and Corey Lewandowski are sleeping together. It's just bad optics, man. I mean, you're being accused of stepping out on your husband, sleeping with Lewandowski, taking a plane, making it into a bedroom. And there's a $143 million contract that was given to a company that has only been in business for 8 days and never did business with the government, along with that $220 million advertising expense that was paid with taxpayer dollars. And so when people talking about draining the swamp, nope, they put more sludge in the swamp. So that's just the way I look at that. So that's why it wasn't a good look for her. And it wasn't a good look when you're talking about fraud in Minnesota and you do business with a company to the tune of $143 million that has only been in existence for 8 days and doesn't have a website. Come on, y'all. Y'all know, we know what that is. It's
So
kickback
do,
money.
so do you think that Minnesota is an anomaly, or do you think that all of these states have tremendous fraud?
I think there's some fraud in government. I think there's a lot of fraud out there. I think that there needs to be more attention be paid to the fraud that exists, but I don't think that either party is going to do anything about it. Because one thing that I've read and what I've understood, a lot of these senators, they go in and they may be worth 800,000, $500,000 when they get in there. Then 4 to 6 to 8 years later, all of a sudden they're worth what, 20, 30, $40 million in an 8 year to 12 year span. And y'all know what that is. It has to be something. Now, of course, some of the money you make is legitimate because you're a senator, you're pretty popular. Maybe you get $3 or $4 million, $5 million a year, man. But to go from being worth 500,000 when you became a senator, and then now you're worth 35, $40 million 8 years in, something's going on there. And we have to start being honest about that. It's not just the Democrats, it's the Republicans, it's all of them. They are not with us. They are defrauding all of us. And while we argue along party lines, they they take money along financial lines and just screw us all over. And we need to start realizing that.
Okay. What do you think in regards to Newsom becoming the president of the United States potentially when Skid Row exists?
I don't know if that's going to be a good look. I don't know about Gavin Newsom. I don't think that some parts of America is going to vote for him. I don't think a lot of people look at California as a beacon, a ray of sunshine, to be the exhibit of who will take care of America, right? So I think that is something that we got to look at. I don't know about people voting for him. And somebody said, "You're alone. God will take care of these corrupt politicians and judges too." Hey, I get that. God will, but at the same time, we must do what we can before He will do what He will. So I had somebody tell me that in church. Do what you can before He will do what He will. So we still have some some responsibility here. Somebody said, Noam lost her job. How about Waltz? Hey, I wasn't a big Tim Waltz guy. If he loses his job, it would not it would not hurt my feelings at all. But Noam needed to lose her job. It was her performance on Capitol Hill was terrible. And I think Trump saw it. You know, Trump's all about winning and looked bad. So California, Minnesota is bad about fraud. Yep, California, Minnesota, they have their issues. So I don't know about Gavin Newsom being president.
All right. So take a moment for all the new people here. We have close to 700 people. Tell everyone who you are and what you do.
My name is Attorney Calvin D. Johnson. I'm a 24-year practicing attorney. I do state, local, and federal criminal defense. I am licensed in various federal courts across the state of Texas, and I've done a lot of federal cases before. I'm a former Dallas City Council candidate. I went to Howard Payne University in Brownwood, Texas. I hold a dual degree in political science and history, as well as I went to the High School for Public Services, Government and Law. So at 14 years old, 13 years old, we were studying politics. So I'm actually about 53 years old now. So I literally have been involved in politics, government, and the legal world for the last 40 years. I've been practicing an attorney for the last 24 years, and I do a lot of stuff in the community. So that's who I am. I can be reached several ways. My phone number is 214-565-5600. My email is attorneycalvindjohnson@gmail.com. And the great website, which I always refer to, is theywon'tletmeout.com. And so that's my website. So that's how you can get in touch with me.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about Don Lemon. Um, they are really trying to put the screws to him. Do you think it's fair, based on what you know about this case? They're trying to say that he colluded, he conspired with these individuals to go and protest when he says, "Oh, I just basically went to cover the story."
I think that I think they're going a little too far in one sense, but I also think that when he went into that church and they told him they wanted him to leave, you got to get up out their church. Like when they're in there, and when you're in a church, most churches have an open door policy, right? But once they tell you you're not wanted and you got to go, you got to go. And I think to go in there and to continue to protest doing church services, I don't think that was smart. And I think you got to be careful about that, because if we start doing that, then they're going to start doing that. Then you're going to have all kind of issues. So I think you got to be extremely careful about that. I think that they're, in a sense, maybe taking things a little too far. But with that being said, I think Mr. Lemon created a situation where that's happening. And so he has some of himself to blame about that as well.
Do you think it's possible he might see some time?
I don't think he's going to do any jail time. I don't see that for him, because even though the Trump administration out there, I don't see him going in and getting jail time if he is even convicted.
What about the 90 people involved that they've arrested?
There could be an issue there. Um, I don't know if people are going to go to jail behind this, but I think that you could end up getting some kind of conviction out of this, or they could go to trials on this. But I just don't think it was very smart to go into a religious institution and protest. And when they ask you to leave, stay there. That's the problem I had. You can go protest, but when they tell you to leave, you got to go. And I think when they didn't leave and they continued to stay there, I think that's where the problem was.
All right. Could you check out the comment here?
Remind you, there was a church that was shot up recently. Once again, that's why you got to be extremely careful. You got these people protesting, people walking into churches. When they don't want you there, you got to go. And so that's why I'm big on that. And I'm a person of faith, man. If you come to my church and we tell you, hey, you're not wanted here, it's time for you to go, you got to go. That's just that. And I think that's where the problem is. I don't think he'll do any serious jail time, though.
So the same administration that pardoned the January 6 individuals is
Mhm.
finding a lot wrong with what happened in regards to the church. Do you think it's because of the First Amendment in regards to the religious practices?
I think it's part of it is religion, and I think part of it is politics. What happened on January 6th was extremely dangerous. They were shouting, literally, kill the vice president. And he's a Republican. So imagine if they would have got their hands on a Democrat. I always tell people, what if they would have got a hold of somebody like an older person like Maxine Waters and somebody actually put their hands on her? Do you know what could have happened in this country? Do you know how dangerous that was? What happens if they get in there and a mob of people decide to descend upon a bunch of Democratic lawmakers and fight them or beat them half to death? Do you understand how serious that could have gotten? That's why I tell people January 6th was a lot more serious than people take than they take it. In addition to that, if I'm somebody that's a senator and you come after me and you're trying to take my life, then I feel like I'm going to do what I got to do to protect myself. And then even after the event, I'm going to want to come after you because you came after me. And so that could have went really, really, really bad. And I think people need to understand the seriousness of what happened on January 6th and the seriousness of going into a religious place. If you want to go in there, you want to protest is one thing. But once they tell you to leave, you got to go. And that's just the truth.
Okay. I want to spend the rest of the time talking about Nancy Guthrie. We're boiling down to about 20 minutes. Are you amazed that they have not been able to figure this case out? We're in over a month.
I am somewhat amazed with all of the abilities to track cameras, to track movement. But with that being said, if somebody is not using a cell phone and if they don't get started early and get a lot of leads in the first 48 hours, it does not surprise me that it's taking this long to solve because they tell you that's why they call that show the first 48, that the trail is hottest the first 48 hours. Once it dies down, man, you're in trouble because the longer that you're away from the actual incident, the more the person involved can move, they can switch up, they can change things, they can hide themselves. And then even when it comes to ransom, the ability to ask for ransom and get paid in cryptocurrencies and these dark monies, it doesn't surprise me that all of this is happening and that it's
Okay.
taken so long and they haven't found her.
All right. Based on what you know and looking at the case as much as you have, do you think the same person that took her is also responsible for the ransom letters?
I think they're probably, I would say to be able to effectively do this, I don't think it's just one person. I think it would have to be anywhere between 1 and 4 individuals. That's what I would think. No more than 4 because I think that would be too big. And I think it's more than one person involved. And that's just what I think based on how this is happening, because I think you're going to have somebody who's going to kidnap her, but I also think you have to have somebody who can carry out the mental part of it and the financial part of it. And I think that to me is going to be anywhere between 1 and 4 people. I'm thinking maybe 3 people that could actually get out and do this and try to demand ransom.
So I was out there for over a week, boots on the ground, out there in Tucson, Arizona. Amazing place, beautiful place. As I was leaving, I ran into in the airport. I mentioned this before. I ran into Homeland Security, and they were actually going across the border because they felt like perhaps she could have gone across the border. And also, they said they also felt like, and this is just one agent talking loosely, they felt like whoever did this had inside information. So, based on that, adding that into the mix, do you think that somehow the person who did this could have been related to her, close friend, or do you think it was someone that knew her vaguely?
I would say somebody that was close friends with her, that knew her movement, that knows the internals of that particular family. I try to tell people all the time, man, you got people that know the family, you got friends, you got certain family members that may be even a little distant that know kind of how she is and where she's at. But then you also got to think about you got yard men, you got housekeepers, you got people that do repairs. Man, that's a lot of people that you can look at that could potentially get in there and do something. So you got to always look at everybody.
In the video, you could see the individual walking in from the left, right?
Hmm.
And then they proceed to her door. They also, when they put out the video, they put out a steel frame in which many are saying that steel frame was from a different day because you could actually see the person had on different shoes,
Hmm.
probably from January the 11th, and the incident happened on February the 1st.
Hmm.
So if they have all this video, right? If that steel frame came from video, why didn't they perhaps talk about headlights approaching her home? Why don't we have any type of video or pictures of a vehicle, being that this is the feds, the FBI, the highest level?
Well, it just depends. Every place doesn't have flock cameras. And then you also have to realize some people are starting to realize that those flock cameras and all of the surveillance is there. And so there's ways to defeat that. I've heard that you can spray something on your license plate to keep your license plate from being read. Some people take their plates off their car. Some people don't have front plates on their car. Like, for example, my car does not have a front plate. Legally, I'm supposed to have one, but it doesn't have a front plate because it messes up the look. So sometimes people can cover their plates. Even though we have a lot of surveillance in today's world, everybody's starting to realize that there's a lot of surveillance in today's world. And anytime that you have a situation where you got the government with all of the powers that they have in terms of cell phone technology, what they call geo mapping, where you can actually map phone calls, internet service based off towers and actually move them in time frames. You got that technology that you can do, as well as the flock cameras. Criminals know that that stuff's out there now. So a lot of these times, a lot of these situations, people are now taking cell phones with them because they know that cell phone's a tracker. There are times where if you're buying a car, let's say from a tote to no lock with a tracker in it, people are realizing, you know what? I need to have my own car that I know doesn't have a tracker. Um, or instead of me using major freeways where I know that there are flock cameras, I'm going to go back streets. Or I'm going to use one car, I'm going to change the car 3 times. And then I'm going to drive out of here. So even if they follow me to this amount, they won't be able to follow me all the way around. So there's ways to try to beat some of this technology. And there's ways to be able to get paid that didn't exist in the past that exist now, where people can try to do some things differently. And I think that's what we're competing with.
Are you shocked that at 84 years of age, she was living in a house without a subscription to her Nest Cam?
I am. One of our relatives who passed away, God bless her soul, some months ago, we had a camera inside our house. So because we had another one of her sons living there and has concerns, so we wanted to make sure that we could watch her and see her at all times, so we could look at that camera and make sure she okay. And she was older; she was in her 90s, and so we understood that we needed to be able to have access to that, and we did. And it really helped us when there was a situation that happened, and it helped us. But we knew exactly what happened because we have those cameras. You would think that there would be a subscription there, and then you would think that her being older, that you would do that. But then you also have maybe her saying, I want my privacy. Older people, they like their privacy. They don't like everything watching them. They don't want to be videoed all the time. So it could have been a situation where she said, I don't want all that around me. So that could have been something where she said herself that she didn't want that level of surveillance on her.
Do you think it's more likely that the issue was with Nancy, or do you think it was more leaning toward her celebrity daughter and all the exposure?
I think it was that because I know she could pay. I mean, Samantha, those they get huge salaries. I don't know if she makes 10, 15, 20 million bucks being an anchor there. She makes a lot of money. And so when you look at that, you got to be extremely careful about what you're going to do. You got to be extremely careful about things happening. You can't just go out and not take certain precautions.
Right. It's been reported that someone was looking up her address and also how much money the daughter made. Do you
Hmm.
think that the feds can track down who actually Googled those matters?
Ask me that again.
They said that around January the 11th, someone was Googling how much money the daughter made and also the mother's address in Tucson, Arizona. Do you
Hmm.
think Google has the ability to go and really pin down the IP address of the individual?
I think that they would, but with that being said, you got other ways. If somebody's Googling that, sometimes they can hide their IP addresses and then they could have moved from where they were. And so I think there's ways to mask things. But I still think Google may be able to do that. But then again, like I said, everybody is technology, right? The technology is updated. So people understand that there are ways to get around and beat things nowadays.
It seems that in this particular case, the sheriff does not want a lot of attention on the case. In fact, there's a Navy group that wants to go out and do an independent search, and they're complaining that the sheriff has not really given them permission to do so. Why would, if they have such grand resources, why wouldn't all hands on deck be required in this case?
I think you can put all hands on deck, but all hands on deck doing what? You got to have leads. And I think when they didn't have the amount of leads that they needed in the beginning, I think it created this particular situation. I mean, you can put a lot of people on a case, but it doesn't mean that it's going to make the investigation go better. Sometimes you can just create more things you got to check and more problems. So I think that you got to think about that when you're investigating a crime like this of some of the things that could happen.
Right, right. Gold Digger says the security system that was recently installed needed to be in place for Nancy.
I think that they needed to be. I think that's something that should have gotten done. I think I think when you have somebody like that, a mother, an elderly person, you got to put precautions in. to make sure you protect them. I remember when my grandmother was getting older, we had a lot of people calling the phone. We had a lot of scammers trying to scam her. You got to have people around her. You got to have protection methods to make sure that they don't get scammed, to make sure that you don't have random people coming to the house. You got to make sure that you protect their money. You got to do a lot of grunt work to make sure certain things don't happen.
On the very first day, the sheriff said that he called in the homicide unit. He said it was a crime scene. And on the second day, they released the scene. Does that sound more like a homicide or a kidnapping?
Sounds more like a kidnapping. But with that being said, I wouldn't have released the scene. I think there was more there that you could probably look at. I just wouldn't want people trouncing on it around that area. I would have kind of kept it going.
What about as far as the blood that's around her front door? When I was in boots on the ground, I heard that some of the blood was inside the front door that was pretty much equivalent to the front. Is that telling that perhaps she left that property alive?
She could have left that property alive and been bleeding. And if there's blood, there is concern there, because you would think that they would have to do something to her to kind of control her movement. So sometimes blood is in existence of somebody being injured, or it could be interest. It could be something where somebody could be dead or dying. So you just never know.
Right. The only thing that I think a lot of people don't get is they say at 1:47 a.m. in the morning that the first camera or the camera was disconnected. There's a rumor that her pacemaker has spiked around 210. Then they say at 212 there was movement detected, and the
Hmm.
sheriff says that it could have been an animal, so we assume it was outside. Then they
Hmm.
say at 228 her pacemaker disconnected from her cell phone. So, with all of that in mind, many people were saying, oh, the person was in her house for 43 minutes. But we could come to the conclusion that we really don't know how long they were in the house because they were still movement outside at 212. But based on what you've heard about this case, do you think there's more than one person that potentially, came in right away?
I think there had to be more than one person, because I think you have to be able to, number one, get her out of there. You got to get into a car. You want to do it quickly. You don't want people to see you. And I think it probably had to be a couple of folks, because you also don't want to leave too much evidence. So I think being two people trying to do that, maybe stealthily and trying to get around, not a lot of people knowing about it. I think a couple of people would have to be involved in something like that. But this is me speculating. But when you look at all of those facts, I think it's probably says more than one person involved. That's what I would think.
So let me ask you this question, just thinking outside of the box. Based on the behavior of the sheriff, right? A lot of people are focusing on Nancy. They're focusing on Savannah, the daughter, right? But is it possible that maybe a police officer could have been fired and he did something of this nature just to get back at the police department?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think that they would be able to figure that out if that happened. I don't know if that's the situation that happened here. I think somebody truly is probably thinking they could have gotten a payday out of this, and they see somebody like her that's an easy target. That's why I try to tell people, when you have money, you got to be extremely careful. And then you're in a place like Arizona. I mean, I heard people all the time talking about what happens in Mexico. There's a lot of kidnappings and stuff like that that go down. Who's to say that that won't start happening here? You know,
Right.
so America is not immune to some of the behaviors of over the border. So you got to think about that.
So let me ask you this question. Is it possible that a family member or friend could have had this done and maybe they had the person show up on camera because they knew that they would be hot for perhaps having to doing this, so they just bring this person in as a ploy, just to as a distraction from their main motive?
That's a real possibility. That could be a smart way to try to throw everybody off, right? So there's just a number of things that could have been done here. And unfortunately, I think that making sure that there's video coverage of her, uh, and like the Nest camera, making sure that they could track movements in the house. When you got somebody like her and you're a very rich individual, You got to protect your family. You got to take several security precautions. I mean, I want you to think about this. As a celebrity, you just got to deal with a lot of stuff. I remember when I worked for Chris Bosh, we didn't invite random people over his house. We always knew who was coming in. If somebody got invited, don't bring extra people with you. You just don't know. These people realize you got money. You having random people in your house. You never know what people are going to do. And so I just thought that there needed to be more oversight in terms of her care. Being the mother of somebody who's extremely wealthy, who's a nationally known figure, you just got to do the little extra on security. And I don't want to, blame, Savannah, but I just said if it was my parent, no, I'm not going to just have anybody be able to get to my mama.
A lot of people are saying that the person could have gone through the back door, but
Yeah.
for some reason they had to tinker around with the front door. Is it possible because around back, and I've been to the property, the camera in the back was high up on the pool house,
Mm-hmm.
so they couldn't really obstruct it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe the main person thought that they would be recognized, so
Yeah.
they had to get a prop in on the front, get it covered, and
Yeah.
then the real person come in. Do you think something like that could have happened?
That could have happened as well because the camera may not in the back may not have been quickly accessible. So let's say somebody is watching that camera and I got to get up there and pull it down. And by the time I pull it down, I'm caught. That front camera, you can go seconds. It's over. Spray paint that joker, pull it down, put your hand over it, cover it up. You can do that in seconds.
Is it possible the guy on the camera in the front was deliberately being dramatic as a distraction from maybe a greater source?
He could be. Like I told you, in this situation, there's a way to go at that upon which you might be able to do some things a lot differently to be able to try to get in that place and create this situation where you can actually kidnap that lady from her location.
Okay. According to statistics, it's usually someone close under these type of circumstances. They said there's less than a 1% chance that a person over 84 or 80 would be kidnapped in the United States, period. And then when you get into Arizona, it's even less. So, um, you think the feds are ever going to be able to solve this?
I think they're gonna have a hard time solving it. I think that even though the percentages are low of somebody getting kidnapped like that, when you're a rich newscaster that everybody in America knows, and your mother is living in somewhere that's not really protected well, you can't have your people in those situations. That's why people live in gated communities. That's why they live in places where there are guards. That's why they live in places where you just can't walk up to somebody's door and knock on it. I live in a place in Dallas where you just can't walk up and knock on my door. It's not going to happen. And see, because you got to understand that I'm in a profession. I got to be careful. And so when you have somebody like a Savannah Guthrie, and you got somebody like a Nancy Guthrie, who's the mother of Savannah Guthrie, a nationally known newscaster, sometimes people put several layers of security on people like that to make sure that people don't get to them. You pick where you live carefully. You create barriers like, for example, if she's living somewhere, you create a outer area and an inner area. I have a friend whose house I went to today. There's a gate that kind of covers the outside, and then there's the door. So if you would try to break in, you have to climb over a wall and then still get to the door. And if you try to pull anything out of there, if you couldn't get the gate open, you have to climb back over the wall to be able to get out of there. That's why you create those additional security barriers so that people have a hard time getting in and out, trying to take humans or take things. So I just am concerned about how the whole setup was at her house, knowing what eventually ended up happening.
All right. Dom says, I've delivered to homes that had three separate security gates.
See, that's what I talk about. They have a gate up front. They'll have another gate, and then they'll have a area where even the outside is covered before you get to the door. I went out to I don't want to. I went out to an NFL player's house who's a Hall of Famer, And that's how it is. It lives in a gated community. You got to get to gate number one. Then when you go inside that community, you got to get to his door, but that's covered by a gate and there's an inner area. Then you got to get inside his door. And so that's what you got to do. You got to live like that, you know? I mean, you got to be extremely careful when you're dealing with criminals.
Okay, very good. So we reached our time. It's been a great show tonight, Calvin. I must say, thank you so much for being on. I really do appreciate all you do. Would you close out for us?
First of all, there's a lot that's happening. You got Nancy Guthrie, you got Trump in America, you got elections, you got the Jasmine Crockett situation here in Texas and Texas in general. But there's a lot to learn in America right now. There's a lot to learn when it comes to elections. First of all, shout out to Jasmine Crockett. Thank you for your service to our communities. We are supporting you in whatever you do next. And we wish you the best. So that's number one. I know Jasmine personally, and I truly, truly wish her the best. Secondly, when it comes to America, I'm really concerned about America. I'm concerned about future elections. I'm concerned about people sending their kids into war. And I'm concerned about people treating our president like he is some person that's infallible. And it's nothing. It's not something that where it's personal against Trump. It's just that a lot of us see some very, very concerning behavior out of him. Even him saying today that he needs to be able to pick the leader of Iran. But with that being said, politics are politics. They had an election. He won. So that party gets to choose because they got the most votes. And so we have to, as a country in America, got to stop fighting each other long enough to govern. And even on shows like ours, and Mel will tell you, we talk about Trump, we talk about Clinton, we talked about Obama, we talked about everybody. It's a situation where we want you to continue to come talk to us. We're not just going to come over here and bash Trump and says he never does anything good. We're not just going to go bash the left and say they never do anything good. We try to call balls and strikes, and we want to be a place upon which we can have great conversation, open conversation about America, open conversation, whether you support Trump or not, whether you support Democrats or not, whether you support Republicans, whether you're independent. Continue to rock out with us. We're a great show. We're a great place. Continue to help us grow. Continue to help Mel. Mel is committed to growing this channel and bringing this information to the people. And once again, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Weekly Legal Review with Calvin Johnson and Mel. Watching the World 777. And please tune in next week. Signing out.
Thank you.
Different voices, but the same song. Building a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the thing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.